to the channel. So in today's video we're going to do a quick update on the M5. That's the V10 M5. Now why V10? A lot of people ask what's so special when they hear it's a V10 and why does everybody care about it? And the fact is, this is actually a Formula 1 inspired which around the 2000s, you know, with BMW being in Formula 1, they used some of that knowledge and capabilities and developed this engine. Now, how much of it actually translates from Formula 1, who actually knows? But the sound of it, especially at that 8,000 RPM, it's just on song and is very reminiscent of an older Formula 1 engine. So there you go, that's what it's all about, that's why it's so special. And it's the only V10 the BMW ever did. Alright, so you saw the PPI, and if you haven't seen the PPI, go back and watch that video. That's actually quite a cool video where we found $9,000 worth of issues, should we say, with the car itself. So it's well worth checking that out. So since then, the first thing to do was get the car registered. The previous owner had actually gone to sell the car prior to selling it to me, and they'd partially completed the title. Now, I'd never seen this before, and I understood that anytime this occurs, you really need to get another title. We tried to go ahead and get it registered with an affidavit of change. That's used by dealers, I think, sometimes in certain scenarios. So we tried that, but for sure the DMV weren't having it and had to get a new title. That was going to be a bit of a pain because it was going to take weeks, if not months, with the way things were going during the pandemic. But the DMV actually let me know that there was one place in Topeka, which is about an hour away, that I could rock up with a power of attorney, the old title, and actually get a title there and then for 25 bucks in like 10 minutes. I didn't believe it, I tried it, and it worked. All right, so I'm super excited now. Just got the M5 registered. That means I can start ordering parts. So if you're ever in any scenario or situation like that yourself, that's the way to do it. And the power of attorney is probably easier to get from, you know, your previous owner and go and take care of it yourself versus maybe waiting to get a fresh title, especially on a car that you've already taken receipt of. But as you might expect, like any new car, the issue started day one. So upon driving the M5 home and letting it rest, I then fired it back up and I connected it back up to the scanner. And sure enough, not only was the dashboard lighting up with a bunch of different lights, but there were some codes stored in the ECU. Now, one of those codes was for the VANOS, the dreaded VANOS. Yes, okay, it's something we checked out. We did code scans before, it didn't come up. Doesn't always happen. So it basically depends on the drive cycle and how that works. But sure enough, there was a VANOS code in there. The codes I was just talking about, yay! So yeah, the rod bearings are going to be done, and at the same time, that VANOS line, that high pressure VANOS line, which tends to fail, especially on these early engines, is going to be done as well. Now that means the car is still drivable. I have to take it easy, that's why I'm not flooring it, which you might be able to hear. But it is still drivable. I just have to make sure that I don't go too high up in that rev range and I don't treat it too roughly. So it should be okay until I get around to the rod bearings, but again, I'm not driving it too much. So probably should mention, we're out and about, but we're just heading up to the car wash. I know, I probably should do it by hand, and there might be a few comments about that in a minute, but time is pressing, and there is actually a very convenient touchless car wash, which I've used for a lot of vehicles over the years, just around the corner from the house. So that is where we're rocking up to right now. to scrape the wheels up. Alright, so what were the other codes? So we had the VANOS codes, they're the ones that are really scary. As well as that, there was a high battery discharge. And what was happening was every time I was getting in the car, the clock would reset. Okay, so this might sound insane, but I'm actually excited by all these lights. So this is day number 2 of actually driving the car. So bearing in mind, I didn't drive it one day. So I went to register it this morning and had that issue with the electrical, which I still need to look into. It looks like something is drawing extra current, possibly the driver's door comfort access module, but anyway, we'll see. But look at all these other lights that have come up, and lights are fun, right? We get to fix something. So passenger restraint system, there's an issue, and so if you go into check, which is you just press and hold that check button, and then you can see the clock has reset again, so it keeps doing that every time I use it. The passenger restraint system, there's an issue with that. PDC system, there's an issue with that. We know about that, we've got the sensor in the trunk. And then increased battery discharge, that's the one that's coming up for the service vehicle now. And then obviously set time and dates. All right, that's done. So car is now clean. So yeah, there was a high battery discharge. Now there was a code coming up on the dashboard, as well as codes obviously in the ECU, and the clock was resetting. So that was super annoying. As well as that, there was a parking sensor, already knew about that. But then there were other codes in there about the passenger restraint system. And so every now and again, and it's actually on now, the passenger restraint light will come on, that the automatic seatbelt will not function correctly and you have to drive carefully. I'm sure it's affecting the airbags as well, so I need to for sure look into that one. Alright, so then I had to decide what to tackle first. We had a laundry list of things from the PPI. Obviously I had to get it registered, which I managed to take care of, which was great. But then the drivability issues in terms of actually just being able to drive down the street without destroying the tyres with those thrust arms were a priority. And so you'll see here a video, or at least a time lapse of a video where I did that, and all I'll say is it took about 3 hours, so it wasn't too bad. I was taking my time. By the tool, there is a tool that helps you remove the strut and actually allow you to release the thrust arm. Go and get it from BMW or make your own. I was trying to use basically a crowbar and it didn't go well. It took a lot of time. The corrosion on the actual struts themselves were significant, so that didn't help. But yeah, I would definitely say go and get the tool. So the other thing I'll mention, just if you ever tackle that job yourself, is when you put the new thrust arms in, make sure that you torque them with the actual arms and suspension loaded. That means you need to lower the vehicle onto something but still be able to get underneath, reach in and torque those bolts. The reason being is those bushings, and this is true of any bushing, but those bushings, you want them to be relaxed when the car is level. If you tighten the bolts when the suspension arms are in full droop, they will be preloaded when you lower the vehicle, and it will make the drivability feel really weird, but also stress that bushing, and it will fail prematurely. So again, just really reinforce that. If you're going to do it, make sure that when you torque those bolts, you do it with the suspension loaded with the car on the ground, and you know, bounce it a couple of times just to make sure everything's settled. So while I was there, I have got the rear arms. I haven't done them yet, but you'll see that in the picture. So I've got the rear arms. I still need to do that. It wasn't critical, right? It wasn't causing drivability issues. It's just that those boots have gone and they're going to wear those ball joints. But at the same time, when I had it on the lift, I did an oil change. Now this was pretty good. I took my time over that one. It probably took me an hour, but all the way through I was looking through the filter. I was draining the oil into a filter to try and see if there was any sign of any wear or any issues. And as well as that, I took an oil sample and sent it off. So here are the results of the oil sample. So as you can see, they really weren't worried about anything when it came to what was in the oil. Now, does that mean I could continue driving with the current bearings? Sure. Does it mean that someone might have in the past done the bearings? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. I am still going to do the bearings, don't worry. And I haven't put that many miles on it with in in its current situation. Right, so oil is taken care of, the thrust arms were taken care of so it could actually drive it down the street without that massive wobble, which got really bad actually towards the end, and you'll see just how worn those bushings were. Okay, so here's the old arm with the new arm. As you can see, they're the same shape, so we've got the right side, but just look at the bushing. So you can see it cracked there, and this one is solid. This one, I can actually move with my finger. Oh wow, look how bad that is. No wonder there were problems. This one though, I cannot move at all. Oh, maybe a tiny, tiny bit. But this one, yeah, it was dead. That's where all the issues were. Let's have a look at the ball joint. So yeah, I can move it. Still feels good though, it's not gritty. This one, I cannot move at all. So this is going to tighten it up amazingly well. So the next thing then were tyres. As you saw in the PPI video, the tyres were pretty bad. So I found some pretty decent tyres. Tyres are hard to come by at the moment, just again due to supplier issues. So I found some pretty decent tyres and got them fitted by a mobile guy. That meant that I could get the car up on my own lift in my garage. I've got this kind of quick jack, really convenient. So I get it up in the garage, get the wheels off, clean them all up, and just know that nothing's going to go wrong in that regard. And the guy did a fantastic job. I'll leave his contact details down below, or at least the company's contact details down below. Because if you're in the local area, in the KC area, them coming to you at your convenience, it's brilliant. I love it. But in doing that, I learned something, and that was, you know, you've probably seen on other YouTube channels and probably experienced this yourself, where wheels tend to get stuck on, where there's a little bit of corrosion around the wheel, where the wheel meets the hub. And when that happens, you have to get quite forceful in, make sure you leave a bolt in, but you get quite forceful by kicking it. And some people call it a donkey kick, where you know, they'll literally turn around, face the other way and kick it as hard as you can. I've done that before and I've had to do that on a lot of vehicles. I don't like doing it. It's pretty violent, and especially if the vehicle's up in the air, there is a risk, depending on how hard you're hitting it, that you might knock it off a jack stand. So what I did on this one was I tried some WD-40 rust penetrating specialist oil, and it was amazing. I literally just squirted it on, a very, very small amount in between the wheel and the hub. So I just squirted it on, left it sitting for a couple of minutes, came back and literally touched it and the wheel fell off. Well, not literally falling off because I had a bolt in there, but the wheel did actually come off away from the hub. So again, I've actually got a can now in the back of all my cars, because if you ever break down and you can't get a wheel off, you're in a really bad situation. So just something else new that I've learned. Wheels and tyres are taken care of. Thrust arms are taken care of. Before I did anything else, I had to take it for an alignment. So that again is one of those things after you do thrust arms, just because it might have been aligned when the thrust arms were in that bad state with that bad bushing, I had to go and get it aligned. So off the chicane. And again, they always do a fantastic job. They did a great job with this, but they did have to fight it. So you saw some of the corrosion in the PPI, and this was true of the track rod ends as well. They ended up having to get a torch out, a plasma torch out, to heat up the nut to be able to back it off and align it. They did it, it was fantastic, but it does mean that the tie rods will need to be replaced at some point. So that's going to have to be added to the list of things to do, especially before I do another alignment. They will not be pleased if I go back in there with those tie rods the way they were, because they'll have to go through and unfreeze them again. Alright, so drivability wise, I can drive the car now, I've got good tyres. The next thing was to try and work out that electrical gremlin that kept popping up and kept resetting the clock. Now, I spent days and days and hours testing everything I possibly could, reading on the internet, finding forums, looking for advice on what to do. You'll see here in some of these clips and videos where I'm taking a multimeter and I've got a security camera pointed at it, so I didn't have to sit there waiting. And basically what I'm looking for is how much current is being pulled by various systems on the car when the car is turned off and locked. Ideally, everything should power down, I think within like 30 or 60 minutes. There's different power levels. So everything should power down in that time, but it wasn't. And so there was another system kicking in that was literally disconnecting systems because they were not powering down correctly. So I spent so long trying to look for this, pulling fuses, trying to work out and narrow down exactly where the issues were, to no avail. So at that point, after like a week or two of testing, I gave up, took the car back to Chicane and got the BMW tools on it. So they basically went to reprogram some of the modules, but upon connecting, there were some real issues, not only reading some of the data from some of the modules, but also from programming any of them. So in there we found things like programming abort on the head unit itself. So there is this CD that was floating around in the car when I bought it, which looks like an update to the head unit. So there was an issue with that. There were also issues with the passenger restraint system, which might again explain some of the codes. But the worst part was, there was actually a module in there called the KGM, I think, the body control module. But that basically, inside it, has what's known as the MPM, the micro power module. And it looked like that had failed. Now this is a common issue on some of the earlier ones, but eventually found it and found that it needs to be replaced. Now there was a bit of a delay on that, but more on that one in a minute. Whilst hunting for the issues though with the MPM and others, I did discover that the previous owner, and I know it was them, because there was actually a receipt in the trunk. But the previous owner actually tried to convert the light system on this across to the facelift lights. Now, I'm not familiar enough and I need to do the research to understand how far they got, but there is a wiring loom in the trunk right now that again was shipped to the previous owner, where it looks like they might have hacked in their own system and they've got this proper wiring loom. So I need to look into that. Maybe that's causing some of the issues, who knows. But I also found two bare wires down just behind the brake pedal. Again, just poking through the carpet. No idea why they're there, where they're from or what they're for. But again, the mystery, or at least the plot thickens, so we'll need to look into that one. Some of the other codes that I found in the car, one was related to that parking sensor, and the other one then was related to the Siren, so the alarm itself. So what I managed to do, it took me about an hour for this one, but I ended up finding on the internet that you can replace the batteries in the Siren yourself, so you don't have to buy a new one. So they are non-rechargeable lithium batteries. They last generally about 10 years, so it makes sense that it would fail. And some customers have just been replacing the Siren module itself. Now, I'm always a little bit worried about that because you never know how long that Siren has maybe sat on the shelf and how old those batteries are. So in the rear right, just underneath the bumper, it's easy to get to, you just take out the wheel lining. The Siren sits there on this plastic sort of triangle. So by removing that, you can actually crack open the Siren and replace the two batteries, the two lithium batteries. Here are the batteries. Now they're measuring okay, but here are the new ones. So even though this is a CR17335, apparently they're the same as the CR123As. So we're going to give it a go and replace it. At the end of the day, it's 10 bucks versus 150. So let's see. Here's a link to the batteries themselves, just in case you need them. At the same time then, when I'm taking care of the Siren, I also took care of the parking sensor, or at least I thought I did. So the previous owner supplied a new parking sensor, which was actually coloured correctly to the car. It didn't look like an OEM part. And so when I replaced it, for sure it worked, got rid of the code, and that sensor will work occasionally. But if I ever do any sort of long distance drives or any fast speeds, anything over 70, that sensor itself will actually fail. And when you come to park or put it in reverse, it will be on constantly, which is super annoying. So I need to go and get an OEM part and replace that properly. So where the car sits now is it's drivable. We've taken care of all the drivability issues, apart from the rod bearings and the VANOS. I know it needs doing. But we're just about to get to the workshop and I want to show you the parts that came in. All right, so we've finally got some of the parts in for the M5. Doesn't it look gorgeous out there? And you can hear the SMG pump. Anyway, so we've been waiting for a bunch of parts. That's everything from the rod bearings all the way through to the MPM. So basically, this there, you can see the part number and I'll include it down below. But this was on a backlog of like 2.5 weeks. So this is the thing that failed when we tried to reprogram the system and is possibly what's causing all of the low power issues. So there's that. That took 2.5 weeks to come. Again, back order. But more excitingly, this has actually come. Now, what is it, you say? Well, here's the part number, and it's something which everywhere pretty much has said is discontinued. And ECS Tuning, big shout out to them. It took over 2 months to come, but it is a genuine ICOM Next A. And you can basically see everything there is brand new from the factory. So now we'll be able to go ahead and program the new NPM, as well as take care of anything else we need to do on the M5. So that's super exciting, and it'll be good to kind of get that up and running. And also I can use it for any of the other cars. Maybe not that one. Okay, so that's cool. We've also got the drain plugs in for the transmission, so you would have seen that in the first video in the PPI. If you haven't, go back and check that out. So basically we weren't missing, but it looks like at some point someone moved the drain plug from the side, where the fill plug, down to the bottom because they couldn't get the bottom on to seal. Well, it's still leaking. You saw that in the first video. We've got some more MTF to be able to top everything up, but that's going to be fun, swapping out those plugs without losing too much oil. So the next most exciting box then is this one. Here it is. This is basically all the parts that we need from FCP Euro to do the rod bearings, and there you can see the rod bearings themselves. Even includes, or at least I purchased, the actual crank tool, oil filters, the VANOS filter. There's the VANOS line in there somewhere, but basically it's all there. I'll find a picture. So there it is, all the parts. It's going to be a while before I can actually get to it and do the rod bearings, because this came, and this is for the Radical. So this is super exciting, but it's basically buried in there is the engine for the Radical. So that's going to be on the lift over the next couple of weeks, getting that done. And once that's done, we can get to the rod bearings on that baby. It is going to be at least a couple of weeks until I can get the rod bearings done. As you've seen, the Radical engine is the next priority. But in total, I've put 1,300 miles on the car. Now in that time, it's averaged about 14.4 miles to the gallon. So that's a mix of city driving as well as some long distance. I did a 3-hour drive down to Oklahoma and others, which were just fantastic, absolutely glorious. The M5 lives up to its name when it comes to being a driver's car. But let's go through some of the costs so far, or at least how much the car has cost. And this is the actual figures with tax out the door for everything that I've either done or purchased. So as you can imagine, there was the title, registration, and insurance. So insurance actually wasn't that bad. I was really surprised. It was $358.30. The title was 25 bucks. The registration and taxes, yes, we have to pay taxes after we purchase vehicles, was $1,746.32. Another reason why you want to negotiate when you buy a car, because the lower you get that purchase price, the cheaper the taxes are. And again, might even help out if you think about it, versus the car that's all up together. You know, you might pay twice as much, but pay twice as much in tax, another 1,500 bucks. So if you get it cheaper and the parts don't cost that much, hey, you win in another way as well. Okay, so there was that. The other things were battery, $246.32. Trans plug, it actually ended up for 2 trans plugs and the gaskets being just over $100 at $100.91. Ridiculous for 2 bolts. Suspension arms, $1,608.40. Oil and filter, $180.14. Oil analysis, $23.79. Tires plus fitting, $1,335.04. Alignment, $163.12. The programming, $163.12. The body control module from ECS Tuning, $455.71. The rod bearings, tool and oil, all from FCP Euro, $1,936.99. The ICOM device, I'm actually pretty happy I've got one of those, $793.58. And then finally, fuel. So 1,300 miles, around 14 miles to the gallon. The average cost of the fuel for this car at the moment, because I've been putting in 93 whenever possible, has averaged about $4.15 because the prices have shot up recently. And so that came in at a total of $375. That leaves a grand total for everything done to the car so far, including registration, insurance, and everything, of $9,500. So the real question is it worth it? How do I put this? Formula 1's inspired V10 that sounds like that. Is it worth it? Absolutely. And I haven't even gone up to redline yet. So again, until the rod bearings are done, I'm not going to. But even just at 6,000 RPM, it sounds amazing. It's a lot of money for sure, and any car like this, especially when you get into the more exotic cars, do cost a lot to fix, especially the OEM parts, which you can go with cheaper parts. I just like to keep things OEM. But the way it handles, the way it cruises, everything about it is well worth it. Every time I drive the car, I just have a big smile on my face. The other thing that I was really surprised about is how quiet things are in the cabin. So this has got that Denon exhaust, which is loud. When I start it up next to the garage, you can really hear it all throughout the house and down the street. But inside, when you're cruising, it's so nice and peaceful. Sure, when you put your foot down, you can hear the exhaust note, but nothing like it sounds like from the outside. Now about that SMG, you do get used to it. The shifts do take a while. It's not quite the same as a manual where you'd be shifting yourself, but you start to drive around it and adapt. So for sure, it's not as smooth as some of the other gearboxes, but it's really not that bad. I've actually gotten used to it now. I mainly shift manually. I just can't wait to experience it when it's knocking off 8,200 RPM. Hopefully this is coming out and you can actually hear the engine. But there is something I discovered this week, which I don't know why I didn't think of it before. So that was first gear, and you can just hear everything that engine provides. So knowing full well that BMW will likely never make a car like this again, and the V10 life, the internal combustion engine life, is not that much longer. Will I ever get rid of this car? Well, I'll never say never, but for sure it's going to be a long time from now. There's just something special about it. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And most importantly, have a great day. Thanks for watching. And there's a hummingbird. For some reason he wanted to come and say hello today. Bloody hell. Out this way. Come on. Over here. Wait. Dive bomber. This way. This way. Come on. This way. Hey. Why is it when I start talking you come down? You've been fine the whole time. This way. Over here. Come on. Down this way. What is it? Is it something about the camera?